And then I will make you the host, Stacey.
Excellent.
Perfect.
All right. Now you can all laugh at me while I try to remember how to share my screen. All right. Can you see? No, you can't see that probably. Can you see the From Tiny Steps to Big Leaps?
No.
Ugh. Come on, Zoom. Let's go down like that. Share. There it is. Now you're going to watch me make it full screen because I am very, very adept at this. What happened? Share your screen. Holy cannoli. Ladies and gentlemen, I messed this all up. I promise I'm a better presenter than you are seeing. Share. Oh, you know what's happening? This is so funny. You guys, the little screen is blocking where I can do this. La, 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 full screen mode. Amazing. I did it. Shocker. Okay. Oh boy. That's why I like podcasting. There's no video. It's just audio. All right. So this is called From Tiny Steps to Big Leaps, Fostering Independence in Kids with Type 1 from Toddler to Teen. And like I said, this is a formal presentation, but we can jump in and talk to each other. So disclaimer, important for you to know, my podcast is sponsored by these companies. We're not going to talk about these companies during this presentation much, but things get mentioned. We talk about stuff. So it's just good to disclose that they do pay me for advertising. They don't tell me what to say or change the content of my show. For the recording, we did this off camera, but about me, I am the host of Diabetes Connections podcast, and I launched Diabetes Connections Type 2 in the fall. These are news and information-based podcasts. I do an In the News episode every 2 weeks. That's like a newscast of what's happening in the diabetes world. And I do a long format interview every week. So this week, I talked to a storm chaser with Type 1, who's actually going to be one of our speakers at Mom's Night Out. She lives in the Denver area. She's very, very cool. She made national news because when the movie Twister just came out, a bunch of people talked to her. She's the founder of Girls Who Chase Storms. So it's very cool. I'm the author of the World's Worst Diabetes Mom series, where I talk about all the mistakes we made raising our kiddo and how that actually helped us all out. And I'm the host of Mom's Night Out, which is a new event for moms of kids with diabetes. It's so much fun. I'll tell you more about that later, but we are coming to Aurora in September. All right, so let me tell you about my story. This is my dude. He was 2 years old, 23 months when he was diagnosed with Type 1. So the picture on the right, I will tell you about first with the umbrella, is when he had just gotten his insulin pump at 2.5. Yes, he still had his pacifier. And he was really excited to get that pump. I can't believe he was ever that tiny. The picture on the left is really important to me. I had no idea when I took it how significant it would be. Actually, I didn't even take this because I'm in the water. My husband's in the boat and I'm in the water. It looks like my son is all by himself, right? But this to me is how we manage diabetes. We give him everything he needs to do. We give him all the tools, and then we let him go. We let him fly. So he's got his life vest on. We're there helping him out. He knows how to swim. And then he just goes. And a friend of mine pointed that out to me one day when I was doing a diabetes presentation, because I just thought he looked really cute in this picture. And she said, that's your philosophy right there in that picture. But how do you get there? All right, this is where we are now. On the left, my son is on a camel. He spent a month in Israel when he was 16. And this is us at Thanksgiving this year. So the family has grown up. It's a little weird having young adult children, but it's pretty cool in some ways. He's very, very, very independent. So, like I said, how do you get from the dude on the left to the dude on the right? He was a wrestler in high school, which I don't know. I got to tell you, I do not recommend. I know wrestling is very popular. It's a wonderful sport. It's wonderful. It's disgusting. It's so gross. And with diabetes, it's so hard, to keep all the gear on. It gets sweaty. It smells so bad. But that is neither here nor there. All right. So here's the question I always ask you all when I'm asked, how do you foster independence? And the question is, when was the last time you washed your daughter's hair? This is my daughter. She's about, 6 years old here. This is our first diabetes walk. And she has obviously big curly hair. And I think it's really just a way to ask or talk about normal parenting progression. And yes, diabetes is different. There's no question that raising a child with type 1 is different. But there's so many similarities about it. when you look at milestones and how to encourage independence. And then one day you wake up and say, I have no idea when I last washed my daughter's hair. She's doing it all by herself. And it's the same thing with diabetes. If you teach them and let them make mistakes and have ridiculous hairstyles. So our son's first, tiny steps of independence came when he was really in preschool. This is his first Halloween on the left, where we took all the candy and gave him a Play-Doh pirate set because we didn't know what the hell, we didn't know what the heck to do that year. We were just freaking out. So we were like, that's it. He has no idea what Halloween is. He's not even 3. We can get away with this. And over the years, we tried lots of different things. I have a whole chapter about Halloween in my book, but I always forget too, there's 2 pacifiers. I don't know about your kids. If you ever had kids with pacifiers, he was like double fister. He would just sleep with like 6 of them all around. So that always makes me laugh when I see that. But we started that independence in preschool. He went right back to daycare because we both worked full time. We were extremely lucky to have a daycare center that would take him back. Their manager had a background as a medic. She knew a lot more than I did. So she learned how to give injections, and she already knew, but she learned for like a little kid and really helped us out. So this summer before kindergarten, I started thinking, our elementary schools don't have full-time nurses. I live in North Carolina. And so we thought the more independent he can be, the better it will be. So we wanted to teach him how to, this is way before Dexcom, by the way. So we wanted to teach him how to poke his own finger and input the numbers on his pump with adult supervision. So we told the preschool, can you guys help us out? And that whole summer before kindergarten, we were like, oh, big boys use their own pumps. Big boys check their own blood sugar. And he was like, yeah, I'm not a baby anymore. I can do that. And, so we taught him. And so with supervision, and I still looking back, it's crazy to think at 5 years old, he started to do that. But that meant that we could kind of give him to more people to watch him and help him, and he could go play with more people. Kindergarten was terrifying for me after those couple of years in our daycare center, which I also call preschool. He was so safe there. They were so fabulous there. I was freaking out. I don't think I've been as stressed out. I think I was more stressed out about kindergarten than college. I was so worried. And it worked out great. We were really fortunate to have teachers who cared and paid attention. But again, it helped that he knew what he was doing a little teeny bit. And, no share, no follow. So we did the best we can. I like to talk about, and I love these pictures of these kids. So elementary school, and again, I know everybody's kids are different. Obviously, children can be diagnosed as toddlers. They can be diagnosed in their teens. You can be diagnosed at 75 years old. So this age is a golden age. This is the age to start talking about independence because elementary school kids are superstars. They usually, every kid is different, right? But this is the age where they want to, I always give you the example, they always want to cut the ribbon at the breakthrough T1D walks now, right? They want to get up in front of their school if they're an outgoing child to be like, I have diabetes, for the most part, with some encouragement and support, they're into it. So if you can start in elementary school by giving them a little bit more responsibility, giving them a little bit more attaboy for, putting on your own Dexcom or going to a friend's house and managing by themselves, on the phone with you kind of too. You have to start that independence. They're not ready for total. It can be really helpful. I'm just going to see, I don't remember what the next slide is. Okay. By the time my son was in 4th grade, every year at the start of every school year, and we still do this, I would say to him, what are your goals for diabetes this year? And I didn't ask in kindergarten because I couldn't even handle it. But in 1st grade, it was, he wanted to eat lunch by buying food in the cafeteria, not me packing it for, with all the carb counts on it. So we did that once a week, and then it gradually went from there. And in 5th grade, he said, I don't want anyone looking over my shoulder. I don't want to check in with anybody and show them my numbers. I don't want to go to the nurse. Like, I just want to do it myself. And I was like, all right. But he wasn't really ready for that, to be honest with you. Like, he was still a little forgetful and, 5th grade. So we decided that he and his teacher would have like a thumbs up signal. So if his teacher gave him a thumbs up and Benny matched him, it meant he had given himself insulin for lunch. That was pretty simple. And that was a good compromise for me. 5th grade is also when he got a Dexcom, but still no share or follow. All right, field trips and sleepovers. I never went on a field trip. I'm a very bad mom. I'm the world's worst diabetes mom, but I never went on a field trip. I never felt the need. He never wanted me. I have a daughter who's 3 years older than Benny. I didn't go to any of her field trips. I was working. And I don't like field trips. So sorry. And I didn't have to go on them because we had people who cared and paid attention. And my kids are also, and again, every kid is different. He was able to speak up. He was not shy about raising his hand and I need help. But those field trips are also a great opportunity for your kid to stretch a little bit, make some mistakes, learn what works, talk to you about what went wrong, what went right, and troubleshoot, which is a huge deal. I'm going to talk about sleepovers if we have time because that could take a whole hour or more. And I've done a bunch on sleepovers. I have some chapters in the book and I've done a couple of episodes on it. But I will say one of the best pieces of advice I got from a diabetes expert, this is a counselor from in Chicago. She gave us a speech that I was at once, and she talked about when your children start problem solving, that's when you know that they're really learning from you. And that's when you know they're really maturing. Now, they may not problem solve the way you do, but when they start doing that and getting to where they need to be, you know they're on the right track. And she said that, and I burst into tears because my son was really struggling between the ages of, I'll say, 11 and 14. His insulin resistant got bananas. I mean, we were just pouring insulin into this kid and it wasn't working. And he had very high numbers and lots of time out of range. And it was really hard in a way it hadn't been. But he was trying and he was troubleshooting and he was problem solving. And a lot of that happened at sleepovers. And so when she said that, I thought, oh my gosh, once we get this insulin resistance under control, this is going to be okay. And it was really, really a beacon of hope for me in a really pretty time. All right, middle school. Middle school's terrible. I know people like, I love middle schoolers. That's great. Thank God people love middle schoolers, right? The teachers in middle school, amazing. The art people in middle school, amazing. The sports, yes, wonderful. Middle school's really hard. And I think it's really hard for diabetes because there is a scheduled brain fog that happens to all kids sometime during puberty. And it mostly happens during middle school. And if you have older kids who don't have type 1, it's a little easier because you see them turn into complete doofuses at this age. And you know it's not just diabetes. So my son really struggled because he would really try to remember to bolus for lunch or change his infusion set or whatever, but he would forget a lot. And he didn't. It's also terrible because this is the age where they don't want anybody babying them, right? They don't want to go to the nurse. They don't want to conform to that kind of stuff. They're independent. So these pictures are kind of funny. This is Riding on Insulin, which is a ski program. All the way on the right is, remember I said those elementary superstars? This is when they start to not want to do all this stuff with JDRF, Breakthrough T1D, and everybody else. So I got my son, he was Rufus one year. And like, that was his contribution. Like, that's how he came back. But otherwise, he's like, I'm not even interested. And diabetes camp was great at that time. That's what this is. And this is, oh gosh, I can't remember his name. He was one of the first American Ninja Warriors with type 1, Kyle Cochran, maybe. It's a long time ago. And this was such a great support for my son. And I love diabetes camp. I could talk about it all day. But middle school was really hard because you want to say to him, like, don't you remember you have diabetes? Like, what is wrong with you? And they forget, they leave stuff behind. But it's the time when they really start being independent. And at least where we live, like that's the time when they're going to movies by themselves. They're walking around the shopping centers by themselves. They're doing things without you. You're still driving them, but you're no longer, did you bolus for that? Are you, they're having French fries, at 10 o'clock at night. It's a tough intersection of brain fog and more responsibility. And our response to that, I got a lot of advice from moms of kids who'd been through this before, was the best tool you have is empathy. Of course you want to keep them on track as much as you can. But even saying things like, yeah, I know diabetes is really hard. How can I help you? And then they roll their eyes at you and they're like, ugh, you're the worst. But they hear you. And a couple of years later, that actually really comes in. So I wish I had better advice. Some of you probably do really well in middle school. My advice to middle school is like, keep him as safe as possible. And thank God for AID systems now, which we didn't have, but keep him as safe as possible. But I'm actually really glad that I didn't, when your endocrinologist can help you figure out like what does safe as possible mean? And it's different for every kid, right? Like if I need my kid to have a 6.1 A1C, I'm not the girl for you. We're not simpatico. Like That's great. And I hope that works for you. And that's wonderful throughout your kid's childhood. And I know, like Sydney, I hope you don't hate me for saying this. But I'm not good at that. My son has never had a 5.8 A1C, but he's a super happy, healthy, and independent kid. We talk to each other. He hugs me. We have a great time together. And I'm really thankful for that. So obviously you don't want your kid through middle school to have 0% time in range and have a 10.5 A1C, but letting it go a little bit with your endos consideration, because they've seen it all. They've seen it all, can really help your mental health and your kids' mental health at this age. This is a tough one. High school, I don't know. High school was much better for us. Oh my gosh, I didn't X out his driver's license. Don't look. I have to fix that in the next iteration. So high school got, I don't know, his brain came back. And like by the end of 8th grade, he was like pre-bolusing, everything was cooking. He was, doing all the things he needed to do. We got Control IQ, I think January of his freshman year. Amazing. It just was so amazing for us. Really just helped him so much. And so he got his driver's license. He goes to regular camp every summer. This was the first summer he didn't go since he was 9. Yeah, I'll talk more about this cast in a minute. But that's another step for independence for us, was regular camp after diabetes camp. And then he graduated high school. He likes his camp so much that he worked as a lifeguard the year after he graduated high school, the summer. And he had to be there for 10 weeks. And it's a camp in Georgia where school lets out earlier than here. So he actually missed his high school graduation to go be a lifeguard at this camp. And I sent the cap and gown to them, and they made him wear it on the beach. So I was like, yeah, it was great. It was really funny. But when we're talking about independence, these are huge steps. If your kid is interested in driving, and I know not everybody is anymore, which is bizarre to me, but hey, that happens, right? This is such a great carrot, like a carrot and a stick, right? A great incentive to say like, okay, well, we've got to talk these things through. You've got to be responsible. You've got to show me that you can be independent. It's an amazing motivator. And it's wonderful. There's a lot out there about driving with diabetes. I feel like I'm like in the book, but you don't have to buy the book. We can talk about it, but I want to zip through and make sure I'm not missing stuff here. If your kids are all 5 years old, this is not relevant right now too. But driving was really, he's been very responsible. He's taken it very seriously. I'm very thankful. We can talk more about that though, if you guys want to. All right, let's talk about guilt. I feel guilty about everything I've told you. I feel guilty that like the middle school talk, like that I just did. I'm like, oh, I feel just like her. Oh, I wish I was better when he was in middle school. Like his numbers were terrible, that kind of thing. I think it's really important to acknowledge that we feel guilty about everything as moms, even without diabetes. It's so hard. I don't have any answers. I put this slide in just because I think it's important to address the elephant in the room. Guilt for me is something that I've tried, I've worked on. I'm very open. I'm in therapy. I've been seeing a therapist for several years. I started going to therapy because my daughter went to college. And as soon as she went, I got home and said, like, who am I? This is very weird. And I'd been working her whole life. It wasn't like I just felt like I had nothing to do. I felt very strange about it. But talking to my therapist, I've learned like I have so much guilt about diabetes, about how my daughter, did she get enough attention? My son, did I do right by him? And I stick this in here because I think when we're creating this independence and we're fostering this independence in our kids, we can feel very guilty that we're not helping them more, that we're not doing everything for them, especially if your child's very young when they're diagnosed and you did do everything. And then you're turning that page and you see them like, oh, they messed up and now they're high, or they messed up and now they're low, or, or just they messed up in something, they're pod alarmed in an embarrassing way. We take all that on. I only put the slide here because I don't think we can help it. I think we can alleviate it by talking to each other, by being open about how hard this is, by acknowledging that perfect isn't possible. I don't care what anybody says. And just to kind of acknowledge that this is really, really tough. And we do take a lot on that isn't fair. But that's a different story too with moms. I don't have any solutions for that other than to say, you are not alone. All right. So this is extra excitement, right? Extra diabetes stuff, extra independence. So this is camp. Benny loves, this is one of the nurses at camp. And obviously this was during COVID. I don't know why he's showing me his Dexcom. Probably something went wrong and I had to send him an extra one. Oh, I know what happened. I forgot about the slide. Okay. So yeah, had to send him some extra Dexcoms. I don't know if you can see, if you look close, oops, the pump broke. Yeah, he dropped it on the floor. So the screen shattered. If you use T Slim, they'll send you another pump overnight if it's in warranty. So it wasn't a huge deal. But then, oops, broke my hand. This was some summer. He actually only broke his pinky. The doctor that they took him to was incredibly cautious and incredibly alarming. So the first, I didn't even go. He's 4 hours away. And I'm like, you're fine. I mean, I didn't say that. The camp had it under control. But that was bananas that I didn't go. But he was, how old was he? He was 17. 17. And I was like, you got this. And he's like, yeah, you don't need to come. It's fine. So that was a crazy summer, right? We had sent him some Dexcoms because he was out, or the transmitter broke or something. And then the screen broke and then the hand broke. This nurse is my favorite. She's just wonderful. Oh, Lord. But you learn independence pretty fast when these things happen. And then college and leaving home. So this is drop off last year. We dropped him off at college. And that was tough. But all of the things that we had done in the past had made it much easier. The one thing we did that I think, again, I don't know how old your kids are, and we can talk about it. Our plan all along was that his senior year of high school, he would be 100% independent with his diabetes while living with us. No alarms from me, nothing. I turned off my Dexcom alarms, which was very difficult. The first couple of weeks of this were very hard for me, even though he was in my house, but no alarms, no urgent low alarms, nothing. And the deal was that he would come to us. He calls it customer service. I'll call you when I need you. So senior year of high school, I figured that way we can say, this isn't working, you're not doing this right, or you need extra help with this. And it was smooth. It was good. It was weird. I still order his supplies, but what we did when he turned 18 was that we put his phone number and my email on all of the accounts. So last summer when he was a lifeguard, he had a crack in his pump and went in the water with it, which you obviously can't do. And I didn't know any of it until I got an email from Tandem that said, your pump is on its way. And I was like, what? And he had done all of that. He had called them, he'd taken care of it. He'd gotten a new pump sent to him. I was a little, I was like, why didn't you tell me? But at the same time, he didn't need to tell me. He took care of it. But other than that, I do the regular supply orders and stuff. But that was wonderful because that whole year we got to see if there were any holes in the system, and he got to figure out what he needed to work on, which honestly wasn't much at all, and go from there. And so then I sent him this. I don't know if you guys ever followed Carrie Sparling. She wrote the blog Six Until Me. And years and years and years ago, she had highlighted this world's okayest diabetic. And I was like, I'm giving that to this kid when he graduates high school. And so I did. And he put it up in his dorm room, which I was really surprised about. All right, obviously be kind to yourself here as we wrap this up. Going along with the guilt, I think there's also one of the comments I get all the time is, why don't you, how did you get yourself not to worry? Because Benny does all this crazy stuff. He went to Israel for a month. He spent 2 summers away from home for 8 to 10 weeks and I don't follow him at that camp. I never did, even when he had Dexcom share and follow, we just didn't do it at that camp. And I think the answer is I never stop worrying. I just let him do it anyway. And that can be very difficult. It's difficult now. Like he's going back to college next week. I'm not going up there with him. And I will worry, but I will let him do it. And I think just kind of being more kind to us is something that's really hard. And so I always tell moms, because this was the advice I got, and I'm still working on it, but if we only talked to ourselves as we would talk to a friend, right? You would never tell your friend, like, whoa, you are a really bad mom. Like, I can't believe you did that. You would never. You'd be like, oh, that's a crazy situation. I'm psyched you got through it. That must have been really tough. Like, whoa, I don't know what I would do. And I think it really is helpful if we can talk to ourselves more like that. All right. So this is normally if I'm seeing you in person, I would be like, keep in touch. I'll just zip through the mom's night out stuff. But we are in Denver and we will be in Philadelphia in the fall. The books are The World's Worst Diabetes Mom, blah. I actually have an audiobook special coming up. If you guys are into audiobooks, I think next Monday we have it going up. I have a promo to win a free copy of the audiobook. And if you have Audible, it's already free. So if you have the credits. And that's that. So I just want to say before we jump in, stop the share. Okay. So there's what, 4 people here tonight that are on the call? All right. So if you are, I don't know if anybody's registered for Mom's Night Out yet. But if you're local to Denver and you want to come, I can give you a free ticket for being on the webinar tonight. Da, da, da. So we can talk about that before you sign off. I'll put that in the chat. We can go from there. All right. So anybody got any questions? I can talk for another half an hour. I zip through that, but I always like, I don't know how old anybody's kids are. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of get more specific. If you want to share, you can put it in the chat. You can unmute.
Hi, I'll start real quick. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to see you. So Lisa's in Chicago? No.
Yes, Chicago. And I was going to say, I went to the Mom's
Oh.
Night Out in Chicago, and it was really fantastic. And my son Ryan is 13 going into 8th grade. And like my husband was out of town that weekend. And as I was leaving to go, I forget what happened, but he's hugging me like, Mom, I need you here. Please don't go. Like, and of the guilt, right? And I was like, buddy, I got to do this for myself. Like, I have to go. And I'm driving there, and I text him when I arrive, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. I'm playing video games." Or
Yeah,
whatever.
that's the worst, right? Oh,
Yeah. But I connected with other moms and just talking, because I don't have a lot of local connections in Chicago, people like kind of the same age, which was really nice. So that was really good. I guess I didn't really have any questions, Stacey, but just to say, like, this was also reassuring to hear, especially to hear you say like that you still worry, because worry is one of my favorite things to do. Yeah.
but Lisa, you have another kid. You have twins.
Yeah. So Ryan is my boy with type 1 diabetes, and his twin sister,
Right.
Sydney. So there's a lot of like compare.
Yeah. The reason I asked is I don't know why any of us had children. All we do was worry. My mother is almost 80 and she worries about me all the time.
Yeah.
I told her I just launched a new podcast with my husband. It's all about couples golf. So it has nothing to do with this. It's just fun. Right. And she's like, are you too busy? I'm very worried about you and your stress level. And I'm like, this is just a fun goof. Like, it's okay. And she's like, oh, I'm not a young person anymore. Like, I'm not a teenager. Right. So I think to kind of go with what you're saying, we all worry, and the worry is there with or without diabetes. Obviously, it's a different layer. There's no, you can't pretend it's not. It's more to worry about. But I think we have to figure out ways to manage that. And also, one of the things that really helped me, and again, this isn't medical advice, but this is stuff that you can kind of look for on your own. The condition of type 1 diabetes, when you are lucky enough to have access to good health care, the studies are all showing that people with type 1 are living just as long as anybody else. There was a remarkable new study I just saw, and it was over people over the age of 60. And they call it the mortality rate, which just sounds horrible, but you guys know, right? It was completely unchanged for people with type 1 diabetes, which is the first time I've seen that, which was really, really great to see. Now, the caveat is you have to have all these people had an endocrinologist. They had, insurance or could afford their insulin and things like that. And they had access to the technology that they wanted. So it's really, really good stuff. And even, I don't know, when you're talking about worry, like there's worry for the future, right? And that's what I'm talking about, like those complications that are going down, 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 but still. And then you're worried about like this question. I'm going to address this question here if you guys don't mind. There's a question in the chat about drinking in college. And then there's like the immediate worry of that, right? Or the immediate worry. Like I never worried really about, well, I shouldn't say it like that. What I worry about with a low blood sugar is more like something else happens. I don't worry so much like my son is low and something terrible is going to happen if he's sitting there low. I worry about like he's hiking and he's low and then he falls, right? Like that's the kind of stuff I worry about. So Kristen had said, I have a junior in high school diagnosed at 6. Do you still follow while away at college? And what about the worry of drinking and parties? Okay, I do not follow. Every family is different and everybody parents differently. So I do not say that this is something that works for everybody. There are some kids, there are some young adults who prefer their parents follow. So for our family, we decided that we were not going to follow. And I stopped, like I said, I actually stopped before his senior year because he was away at that camp. And the Wi-Fi is terrible at that camp. And he started going there before Dexcom. I think it was a little easier for parents like me who didn't have Dexcom from the beginning, because what if you've never been without it, I think it would be very difficult. But once you've seen, like, hey, it's okay. It was 7 years with no Dexcom and 9 years with no share. He didn't get share until he was 11. So I say all that because sometimes I feel like I come off like, well, you don't need it, no big deal. Like, imagine you've only known a Dexcom from the minute you left the hospital, which is something that happens. Did not have, I mean, that's a very different experience than 11 years with no share. But we didn't. I think that question, the follow stuff, is about sitting down with your child their senior year of high school and starting those conversations. Because my son said to me, you can follow all you want, but I don't want you contacting me. And my point was, if I can't contact you, why am I following you? Right? And he had been away so much that my worry about, well, if he goes low and doesn't wake up automatically, like he'd had a bunch of years away at regular sleepaway camp, not diabetes camp, where that could have happened. And he managed it. I can kind of talk about our tips for that in a second. I'll tell you a funny story real quick. I used to think that I had a kid who woke up with every low. Like I said, ages 2 to 9, no Dexcom. And I'm like, oh, we're so lucky because when he's low, he just wakes up. Well, it turns out like he would just sometimes wake up and be low. It was the other way around. It wasn't that he was low, so he woke up all the time. Because once we put a Dexcom on him, we realized we'd missed a bajillion highs and a bajillion lows. But rather than me freaking out, what that said to me was, oh, that's not a life or death situation because we've missed a million of them. And he's okay. Should you treat lows? Yes. Should you ignore them? Absolutely not. That's not the point of that story because I've had it misconstrued. The point is, and ask your endocrinologist about this, in a healthy person with type 1 diabetes, generally speaking, they should get a little help from their liver to bring that low up. Most of the time they'll wake up. And if they're high, that stinks, but it's not an emergency in the moment. And what we did on sleepovers was he would always have a Gatorade with him. And he still does this if he's not at home or doesn't have access to, something right next to him. Gatorade, if you wake up and you feel weird, just drink it. Don't even bother checking because remember, he would have had to do a finger stick. So just drink it. Don't bother checking. When you're feeling better, then check your blood sugar. And he never did that and was high. He never did that and became, super high. Obviously now with Baqsimi, I'm getting way off topic, but with Baqsimi and other, Xeris, the Gvoke HypoPen, these are amazing things to have nearby. And we insist, and he does it anyway, that he trains his roommate or he talks to his friends. He tells everybody. He always says, whenever I'm sleeping with a new person, I'm like, haha, very funny. But in high school, he wrestled and there were overnights all the time and they would switch roommates. That trip to Israel, every 3 days, they were switching roommates. So he would explain to them, this is my Gvoke HypoPen. This is how you use it. If you're afraid to use it, call this adult. If they don't answer, call 911. I'm not going to be embarrassed that you did that. I'm not going to be mad at you that you did that. And he's a very open kid, so it's easy, but that's a non-negotiable for me. And we had this talk right before college, and I said, well, what would you do if your roommate says, I can't do that for you? I'm too scared. And he said, well, first of all, I've never encountered anybody who said that. He said, that person is just a bad person. He said, what if I fell out of the bunk and I broke my leg? They're not going to call 911 for me. He said, it's the same thing. And I would request a roommate switch. I'm like, whoa, okay, great. So that's something to put in your back pocket because it is the same thing as a broken leg. It's an emergency. And then what about the worry of drinking in parties? Yes, 100% yes, 1,000% yes. That's my big worry. So we started to try to educate him early on. There's a fantastic column, and Sydney, you probably have resources on this too, but there was a column years ago called like No Bull from Uncle Will. There was an advice columnist that used to write for Diabetes Mine, and I can send that to Sydney, but you guys can certainly Google it up. And it was like, give this column to your kids. And it went around, I don't know, 2008, 2012, something like that. It was like very, very big, and it's fabulous. But our endocrinologist also, starting around age 13, would ask me, I'd like to have a private talk with Benny. Is that okay with you? And I don't think at 13 he was talking about alcohol, but he was laying the groundwork. And so every year during that appointment, as he got older, I know at age 16, because Benny told me, he started talking to him about alcohol. And I would always say to him, you don't need to tell me anything. These are your private discussions with the doctor. But he told me, and they would talk about all the things you would expect a kid not to want to talk about in front of their parents. So your endocrinologist may start doing that. Sometimes there are teen programs. Now, listen, every parent may feel differently. And if you feel strongly that these are not appropriate subjects for your kid, then you need to tell your doctor. I would say, obviously, my parenting philosophy is if there's a chance they're going to try these things, I want them to have all the information. But we all parent differently. That's just the way it goes. But I think talking about drugs, talking about alcohol, talking about sex, talking about all these things that are really affected by diabetes and vice versa is really, really important. So my son knows how to drink. He's underage. So I don't think, and I know he's drinking. I just know it at college. He's not sitting here at home, but Lord have mercy. He's in a fraternity, which I asked him not to do freshman year, but he did anyway. But he told me, I had a very good talk. All right, I know we're getting off topic, but real quick. But I told him about the fraternity was because I was in a sorority in college. I said, look, these guys could be your best buddies, friends for life. The guys, ride or die, but they could be a bunch of jerks. And you have to decide in your heart, in the moment, is this safe? And if it's not, you need to stand up and walk out of that house. And diabetes or not. And if they're a bunch of jerks, you're not missing anything. Good people aren't going to hurt you. And he was like, I know, Mom, I know, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, and I already told them all I have type 1 diabetes. And I already told them that there's certain things I can't do. And there's certain things that I may tell you in the moment. And I'm not trying to be a jerk. And I'm not trying to lay out. Guys, I am really watching my language. I'm usually flying with worse language than this. All right, this is good. I'm going to tell them that I can't do X, Y, Z. And I'm not trying to lay out. And he said, there was one time when I was very low and I said, time out. And he said, and it was amazing. He said, everybody brought me so much food. He's like, I couldn't even eat it all. They just stopped what they were doing and brought him stuff. So it was good. Am I happy he rushed? Absolutely not. But he's got some good friends and he seems like he knows what he's doing. Okay. How did you deal with the roommate resident assistance training in Lowe's and emergencies? I don't think I ever met the RA. I know Benny, the resident assistant at college. I know Benny just told them I have diabetes. But I let him deal with it. I let him, but I told him it's non-negotiable. The roommate has to know you have type 1 and has to know how to do emergency glucagon. And if you're not going to do it, I will do it. And you don't want me to do that. So, but he'd had practice after all those years. And the training is, literally, I love this thing. I know Xeris is a sponsor of the podcast, but between this and Baqsimi, the nasal spray, if you guys don't have emergency glucagon, you should. It's covered by insurance. Everybody who has insulin, uses insulin, should use this. This is the easiest thing. You pull red and then you stick it on your thigh and you push yellow. That's the emergency glucagon. Sydney, do you remember the red box? We have to mix everything up. It's like an EpiPen, right? And everybody knows EpiPen in college, so they can do it. The Baqsimi is literally open the package, shove it up your nose. Super easy. So he trains them with that. And if you want a trainee pen, I know Xeris will send it to you. If you have any issues, let me know. I can always get them. But that's it. He just did it. All right. How old was he when he started sensing highs and lows? This is such a great question. I will say, anecdotally, I think 7 to 8 years old is when it really starts kicking in. There were times when he could tell, but for the most part, ages 2 to 7, he was kind of like, you think about it, right? My daughter would get an ear infection and she wouldn't be like, oh, my ear hurts. She'd be like, I'm cranky and try to hit you, or she'd be kicking, or she's not home. She was a really grumpy, sick person, and she just couldn't articulate mother, my ear is aching, and it's the same thing with blood sugar. They know something's going on, but they don't even know how to articulate that things are going wrong for them. So what we were encouraged to do, I don't know if it really works, we tried, was because you can see it on the Dexcom now, right? So you can see oh, hey, you're going low right now. We're going to treat that. But I'd like to know, can you tell me how you feel? And sometimes they can, sometimes they can't. How do you, and just talking them through it can really be helpful in not a scary way, right? An age appropriate way. And sometimes even after you can say wow, that must be really strange. what do you feel like? Or, when they're feeling better. Because Benny used to say that he would, he would be, I'm trying to remember when I'm just thinking when he was high, he would be very angry. He just got very angry. And we used to explain all the time to him, he loved the Hulk. So we used to be like, you're like the Hulk, this is what's happening. But like, unlike the Hulk, you can be like Bruce Banner when you want to. And the whole, I'm getting ahead of myself, but the whole lesson there was, yes, you feel like garbage. Yes, you want to kick somebody, but you can't. You got to go to your room and like kick a pillow or get control of yourself. And we used the Hulk and Bruce Banner to kind of talk about that. Like, you need to get Bruce Banner back and you need to go upstairs and Now, did it work all the time? No. He'd have a tantrum in the grocery store and you'd be like, he's 300, and no one knew what you're talking about, like, sorry. We once were on an airplane and we had landed and he would not leave. He was like 350. It was this terrible airplane experience. And I couldn't get him off the plane. He was just like sitting, and this woman in front of me was like, get his ass off the plane, And thank God my husband was like, ladies, because I was about to like go ballistic. Ladies, we need to calm down. And I'm like crying and sweating, this is the worst. And we got off the plane and I like swung my bag around and like everything went flying. And we didn't fly again for about 3 years. I was like, I can't do that. I can't. But yeah, it's hard, right? They don't know how they feel. So I would say 7 or 8. And I mean, the other thing to keep in mind is, I mean, I made him, again, bad mom, but I made him treat his overnight lows without me at age 17, senior year of high school. I didn't have an urgent low alarm on anymore. That was our agreement. And he was doing it way before that because, like I said, he'd been away from home. Really, the trip to Israel was the turning point for me, like knowing, all right, he's got this. I wouldn't recommend that. It's kind of extreme. I didn't even want him to do it, but he did it. I think it's all of these conversations, like even at 5, right? The school year is starting or about to start. So it's like, hey, what do you want? What do you think would be cool to do with diabetes this year? Or, what's a good goal for you? Like, you're going to read 5 books this year and maybe do blah, blah, blah with diabetes. Everybody's different. And sometimes I don't know. Sometimes I felt like I was going through the motions with it. There are certain ages where they're like, we don't care. We don't even want to talk about this anymore. But I think knowing that you're involved, knowing that you want to be engaged, I think has gone a really long way with my son. I mean, he laughs at me all the time. If he were here, he'd be like, you didn't do any of that. I did it all myself. Like, I was born knowing what to do. He would. But I think it's because we've empowered him so much. Sometimes I think he's too comfortable with it. I'm like, dude, you have to like remember that you have diabetes. You have to do XYZ. And he's like, yeah, it's fine. I've got it. I'm like, okay, all right. That's not how I would do it, but I am not a 19-year-old boy. So anybody got anything else to throw my way? I will just quickly then talk about sleepovers if you want within the 5 minutes I got left. All right. So I hate sleepovers. I just hate them. No one sleeps. They eat crap. If it's at your house, you're up all night. And I don't like it, but they do them. In my neighborhood, they started in like 1st or 2nd grade around age 7. And so the rule around here for a lot of kids was you had to be 7. That was just a parent rule that we kind of all came up with. And so that was my daughter at age 7 would go to sleepovers. So when my son was 7, he was like, okay. So again, it was a really good chance to give him more independence because I did not have friends that I wanted to train to do diabetes. I was not going to ask any of my friends to wake him up in the middle of the night and poke his finger. Again, no Dexcom, do stuff like that. Administer insulin. I was comfortable that if they needed to, I would call them and walk them through helping Benny. That was fine. So what I would do, especially with newer friends, I would do like a pretend sleepover first. I don't even think we called it that, but the parents and I would talk about it. And he would go over there for dinner. He would go over there either after school and stay through dinner, or we would just go over for dinner, watch a movie or play after. And I'd pick him up at like 10:30. It was like a late night, woo. And that was enough time for the parents to see all the stuff that Benny had to do because I think I would text, or I would give them kind of a schedule. Because when you're doing finger sticks, you have to say at 5 o'clock he needs a finger stick. and then you eat. And at 7 o'clock, he needs a finger stick. At 9 o'clock, he needs a finger stick. Like we would do it every 2 hours for situations like that. I think we were doing it every 2 hours for lots of things. What a pain in the ass that was. I'm so glad we don't have to do that anymore. And so they would see what they had to do. So when he started sleeping over, we didn't do overnight checks. I mean, crazy. We just didn't do any overnight checks for sleepovers. And, it was fine. He would sometimes wake up, have that Gatorade next to him, drink that. I mean, the stories I can tell you about sleepovers, which I will tell you in a minute, the reality of it was, so before Dexcom, the reality of it was he was higher most of the time. I mean, let's be honest. This wasn't a question of like, oh, he was checking and he was 120. He certainly wasn't. We also would take his insulin pump and you could adjust it in those days to say, okay, his goal is we're trying to bolus down to 120, give or take 25 points either side. So for sleepovers, I would often change that and say, we're trying to bolus down to 150 because I didn't want him going low. But even with that, you're dealing with pizza and crazy food and popsicles. And so a lot of times he probably was at 220, 250 all night. I don't even know because we didn't do finger sticks all night. So to be clear and honest, it's not like we were doing this in a, really tight time and range way, but we were doing it in a safe way that made sense when you're doing finger sticks. So once he had the Dexcom, it was like, okay, you must look at it before dinner. You must look at it before bed. And if it alarms, like, here are the steps you're going to take. My sleepover nonsense stories are, he's such a ding dong. My neighbors behind us, where he spent a lot of time, their backyards abutted ours. So we were local, but we were away for one night. And he was staying at a friend's. We had a babysitter with our daughter at our house. I guess the sleepover had kind of been spontaneous. And they called me the next morning at 4 a.m. My son was low. He woke up his friend and they were like, well, we don't want to wake up Kevin's parents. So I'm going to walk home and I'll just treat at home. He was like 70. He wasn't like 40, but 4 o'clock in the morning, bye, Kevin, walks across the backyard, like calls the babysitter ahead of time. Thank God. So she didn't have to think someone was breaking into the house. She has type 1 herself. So she's like, come on in, doofus. We're going to treat you. You're good to go. But that was an amazing time to teach him. First of all, I wanted to kill everybody, right? But it was an amazing time to teach him. You're not rude if you wake parents up during a sleepover. And a lot of kids feel that way. So that's one of the most important lessons when you're talking about sleepovers and preparing your kids. Remind them that, you've got to make sure that Mrs. Smith knows that if you need help, you need help. And the other thing is, that's why I sent him with the Gatorade, which he didn't have that night because I wasn't there to give it to him. But if your kid is at a sleepover, sometimes the low stuff is in the garage fridge. So you want to make sure they have what they need with them. That can be, I have 5,000 stories about when things went terribly wrong and Benny survived. There was a kid he was friends with who had a garage fridge full of like exotic sodas. Like we'd never seen it. It was full. And she's like, here's where all the sugar is if he needs it overnight. Ha ha. And I'm like, oh, they're drinking that now. Like they're not waiting till he's low. And, but they had a pool. They had a swimming pool. So they were swimming and he called me the next day. He's like, Mom, you're never going to believe this. He said, I had 3 sodas. He said, but I never went above 100. And I'm like, oh, I guess you needed them, I'm sure he bolused for 1 or 2 of them, but like madness, hormones. So sleepovers are fun. That's where all the mistakes get made and then you figure it out. It's very scary. I know I try to present it with humor, but I think especially, I know you said you have a 5-year-old. Once they get a little older and a little bigger, that kind of stuff gets a little easier. You never do stop worrying. But gosh, I have so many, they just, the things you think they know, like wake up the mom. I was at a sleepover at my house as a kid. My friend got a gigantic cut on her leg, like from my 70s metal trundle bed. And we had to go to the emergency room. Crazy things happen during sleepovers. And you have to, as the parent, you're signing up for that. So you got to make sure that, that's why I don't like sleepovers. Oh my God. All right. So I don't know. Again, there's only a couple of you left on this call, but I would like to give you a promo code. Sydney, can I send that to you to email them? Is that the best way? Or do I want me to put it in the chat?
I would put it in the chat if you don't mind, Stacey.
Not at all. Let me just grab the link too while I'm at that. Da, da, da. So you guys, I need your help before I let you go here. I'm not super well connected into the Denver diabetes community. Okay, so that's the website. So you can learn more about the event. And so any way to spread the word, and CDF, yeah, right? Web is the promo code. And that will take it down to $18. We have to charge an administrative fee. But it's $109 right now with our early bird special. It's a 2-day event, super fun. Lisa can tell you. I like to talk about it as it's technology, education, community, and cocktails. So there's much more information on that website, but if you do register, use a CDF web, like webinar. And I'll leave that up there for like 2 weeks. And I won't be upset if you spread the word a little bit. I hope that helped a little bit. Look, the bottom line is this is really, really, really tough. Empathy and communication with your kids sounds like woo-woo nonsense, but it is really good. It really pays off because the ultimate goal is they leave your house, they are happy, healthy, and independent. They still want to hug you, and they do not fear their diabetes. To me, that's a winning formula. It doesn't mean everything's perfect. It doesn't mean we did everything right. It doesn't mean that, I don't feel guilty and I don't worry. But knock on wood, I got 2 kids who still talk to me. They both are out of the house, which is crazy. And, time flies. Time flies. But it's all good. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of nonsense. I'm just thinking about your 5-year-old, Sarah, right?
Yeah, she's crazy.
Yeah. He was such a hellion when he was 5 years old. It was like, we used to say like he woke up in the morning, put the pedal to the metal, and then like 5 minutes before he fell asleep, he would kind of lift it up and then pass out.
I liked what you said about, I feel like I try to communicate that to her. Like, yes, you're high. Yes, I understand you're upset, but that doesn't give you an excuse to yell at me, right? Like
Right.
you don't get to just do whatever you want just because you have diabetes and you're emotional. So I appreciated that you said that, because sometimes, like you said, that guilt comes in where I'm like, I don't know if I should have handled it that way, but it's like, I don't want her to use her diabetes as an excuse, to
Right.
people poorly or to just be crazy all the time.
Right. Right. I mean,
whatever.
with the lows, obviously they can't help themselves, right? You have no brain control when you're low and you've got to do the best you can. But I have a friend who has the same philosophy, right? She didn't want her daughter's now 30. So, and she did a good job. But she used to always say, and she was at Mom's Night Out in Rhode Island. She gave this talk. But you have to remove yourself from the situation. Like you need to remove yourself. And she was about, I don't know, 11 or 12 in that lovely phase. And she was really high and she was really mad. And she's like, fine, I'm really mad. And I'm going to just go to my room. Like, I know I need to remove myself. And my friend was like, oh, so we were thinking we're such good parents. Like, we're the best. We did such a good job. I'm sorry, this bit is profane. So Sydney, you can edit this out or don't, whatever. And she's like, and her daughter then went up the stairs like this. F you, F you, F you, all the way up the stairs. And like, she was so mad, but she removed herself from the situation. And she obviously didn't say F. She said that, So we try as parents, but the kids can be kind of smart and funny. Yeah. So I used to let my son too. This is so silly. He still, obviously infusion sets are no fun. Pod changes are no fun. So I used to let him say potty words whenever we changed it, like starting at age 3, so potty words. So every once in a while now, they were obviously not swear words when he was little, but they were whatever he thought potty words would be.
Okay.
And, he would be like pee pee or whatever. So when he's 18 years old this last year, and he's like grumbling about changing his infusion set, I'm like, you can say all the potty words you want. And he was like, oh my God, I forgot about that. He's like, poop, whatever.
Funny.
Really
That's
silly.
I like that, because we've been doing like a reward chart, which is, but then we have to change the site every 3 days. So it's,
what helps too? This really does help. And it's not just me. I read this years and years ago. So you have to be kind of careful. But if the person receiving an injection of any kind coughs while they're getting it, it actually tricks your body into not feeling the pain the same way. There's a lot of studies on this. So I don't know how, we don't do pods, so I'm not sure how you would time that. But with an infusion set, it's like 1, 2, 3, click. So he coughs. I mean, I haven't done an infusion set in, I don't know, 6 years, but I hear him and he'll be like, and then and he says it really works well. So I think a rewards chart is great though. You know, anything that helps. You know, potty words I think are fun because they're funny. They're
Mhm.
really funny.
Yeah, she does like to laugh, so that might.
Yeah. We would turn him upside down. We would do all sorts of crazy things. That got a lot easier. It was really, really, really hard. He would run away.
Yes.
I mean, I was crying. Do you use a tube pump?
Yes. Yeah, we do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's hard. It's really hard. I would try the coughing for sure.
Okay.
You know, just tell her to try to hold still while she's coughing because you don't want her like, ah. But yeah, it was a very long time. And it was a long time till he did it himself. I was actually really worried that I was babying him. Because outside the house, like if it came off at school or at a sleepover from about age 8, he could do it, but he never wanted to do it. And he would really, really never do it at home until he was about 12 or 13. And looking back, I'm really glad we let him. I'm really glad we didn't push that because they do it when they're ready. And as long as they can be independent, you know, as long as they can go to grandma's or they can, you know, then I think there's no problem. But I feel like letting him wait till he was ready helped us a lot. I felt really bad.
No, I mean, I think that makes sense. I mean, for her, she can't even remotely because she only has fat on her butt right now. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
literally the only place that we can do it. So,
We
but-
don't worry about rotation. We did it for 7 years on his butt, and we just
Oh,
moved
wow.
it over, up, so
Yeah.
because he was so
Cheek to cheek.
right.
Okay.
You can their skin heals so well. Amazing. So she'll be fine. We did it till he was 7 years old, and then we did hips and he's never done arms. I'd really like him to rotate more, but you know,
Makes sense.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Did I get everybody's questions? I mean, like I said, it's not real medical advice, it's mom advice, but we got to help each other. I just think it's so exciting that you guys have AID systems and we do too now. I mean, I think you do. I assume you do. It's not perfect, right? It's not perfect, but oh my gosh. So that's one of the things that I worry less about college. You know, I do think about my friends who sent their kids to college with finger sticks and MDI. And I'm like, there's no way he'd be living in my basement forever. So, you know, it definitely is a lot safer when I think about the fact that he's got a Dexcom and a pump that talks to each other. That really is a good thing. All right, I will stop talking now.
Hi, Stacey. Hi, ladies. Both my kids are type 1. My
Lucky.
son was diagnosed when he was 2 years old, while I was 38 weeks pregnant with my daughter.
Oh my
And
God.
then 9 months later, I diagnosed my daughter. And now they are 9 and 7 years old. You know, they go to school, 2nd and 4th grader. And for the past 3 years, I have been working at their school, mainly because at the time, the nurse quit 2 days before school started, and then they had rotation nurses, and then they got a nurse that wanted to go everything by the book, and she thought I was exaggerating when I would come and give him injection because she had to wait 3 hours before she could give him another, injection. So working with them for the past 2.5 years was amazing, but this year I feel comfortable that they could handle it because we have an amazing nurse, and I want to go back to school and be a diabetic educator. It's a long path, I know, but I feel guilty because, I mean, we started school a week ago. So I haven't even had a chance to text the nurse because their number's been amazing, just in range. But I find myself just sitting in a parking lot and I was like waiting. Are they going to go low? I don't know. I just can't relax.
Yeah.
Is that ever going to go away? Am I going
It will go away, but you're in a very hard spot right now because, and I want this, I mean this in a really, really supportive way. You've been in the school with them, right? Your routine has been a completely different one for the last couple of years. So now not only are you saying, okay, somebody else is taking care of my kids, that's not how it's been, right? You've been there. So give yourself some grace for that. But I don't think it will change until you change it, which is really hard. So I would encourage you to get in touch with the school, right? They all know, right? They know the kids have type 1. I mean, you want them to be safe. You want to make sure everybody knows, and you can just email them or whatever, be like, their supplies are here or whatever works for you. But I will say, again, we all do this differently. It's going to be okay if their numbers aren't good. right? If they go high, they go low, all that crap's going to happen. And if you're not there, it's going to be okay. So what I think is going to happen is this isn't going to feel okay for you until something like that happens, until she's 300 and you text the nurse and they're like, we're on it, and they do what they need to do and it works out. Then I think you'll feel a lot better. Now, there are some schools where that doesn't happen. Let's be honest. There are some schools where you don't get as much support, where you do lean on parents more, where the kid is low and they don't handle it appropriate, right? I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm wearing rose-colored glasses. So if you're afraid that is happening, that's another story, right? But
No, the school nurse is amazing. It's just that I feel just because I've been doing it.
Yeah,
I've been
you're doing a
walking
big
into their
change.
classroom, doing everything. Now I'm just in the back end. What do I do now?
Yeah. Okay, so here's a big challenge for you. Okay. I'm assuming you don't work outside the house, right? You've got time to sit in the parking lot. Okay. I would just a couple of things. Give yourself something to do for an hour that isn't, I don't know if you're spending the whole day there, but like cut back gradually. Be like, all right, I'm going to drop the kids off and then I'm going to go to a coffee shop for an hour. I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to read a book. I'm going to meet a friend. Like I'm going to go to a gym. Assign yourself stuff. Make appointments for yourself that are busy work kind of things.
Okay.
And lean on your community. Maybe there's another mom with a kid with type 1 who gets it. Because I know our friends are wonderful, but sometimes they don't understand why we're so nervous or why things are kooky. I would gradually get yourself out of that parking lot. And, just little things like, okay, I'm in that parking lot for 4 hours a day. I'm going to try to be in there for 3 hours a day. Or I'm going to try to be in there, or if you feel really comfortable, like I'm going to be 5 minutes away, but I'm not going to sit in a parking lot because that's not fair for you. That's not fun. You wouldn't want to sit there. You want to go to someplace nicer, at least, I just don't think that, I think that the hardest thing is that you have to do that for yourself. Again, what would you tell a friend, right? You kind of have to push yourself to do it. But I don't think it'll be easy. I don't have any advice to be like, and then you left and immediately felt better. It's going to take some time. It really will. But it sounds like your kids are in great hands. The one thing I wouldn't tell you to do is I wouldn't tell you to go get a full-time job somewhere else and really go to do a 180 so it's completely different. I think that's tough because you will want to be nearby. It seems like you're used to that. You enjoy that. Maybe you could be a sub in another school or something. I don't know. I would just find something to keep you busy, something that you like. And then the other thing is as moms, we get lost. You don't want to lose who you are. What'd you do before kids? Did you listen to music? Did you dance? Did you silk screen shirts? I don't know. Everybody's got crazy hobbies. My daughter just took up crocheting. I'm like, all right. I thought that was something grandmas did. She's 22. So I would find stuff like that. But I would also try to do it elsewhere just for a little bit extra time and kind of wean yourself off. You might find after 2 days that you're like, I'm not coming back to this parking lot. I give you permission. You can friend me on Facebook. You can message me and be like, I'm not going to the parking lot yet. I'll be like, give it 10 more minutes. Don't go back for 10 more minutes. Or maybe this group. I don't know. I don't know if you have any diabetes mom friends in your area.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else have any questions, concerns, thoughts?
My last thing would be, again, if you guys are involved in the Denver diabetes community, I really need help spreading the word about Mom's Night Out. Facebook groups, anything like that. Sydney and her folks have been amazing. So we're trying to get into some nooks and crannies of people, because what always happens is we come into town, we do this great event, we leave, and then 10 people say, I didn't know it was happening. I'm sorry I missed it. So it's September 20th and 21st in Aurora. So again, that's the best link. And you can always, I'm easy to find. I'm all over Facebook and Instagram. So track me down if you have any questions, and Sydney can always get in touch with me.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Since we recorded this, I am going to send this out to our support group list. So if you need to rewatch it or re-hit any of the points that Stacey talked about today, you'll have access to that. And I think you all have my email. So if you need to get in touch with Stacey or need me to connect you or anything, just let me know. We appreciate you all taking the time out of your day. And thank you, Stacey, so much for being here. Really appreciate you.
It was great. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.